Welcome everyone, a very warm welcome. It's lovely to see you all here. Thank you for coming. So we've started these gatherings a couple of months ago, a few months ago, just to provide a forum where people can come. There's a talk about a spiritual issue or a topic, and it's a place where we can come and listen and be inspired and also have conversations about these topics and discuss and learn more about the truth from each other. So Shiva is our speaker for tonight. Thank you very much. So just to tell you a bit about Shiva, she was born in Iran, and she continues to learn about life through changing circumstances that have moved her across cities and countries. Working for global companies for 15 years, must we offer our condolences for that? It led her to the field of workplace consultancy and opportunities to engage in conversations about working as a community with individuals and groups of various organizations in South Africa and abroad. Working on a project in the Democratic Republic of Congo during the COVID era provided exposure to the community building efforts of the Bahá'ís alongside diverse members of society. Further studies on the Baha'i perspective on the connection between worship and service and developing our material and spiritual capacities has led to further understanding on building better communities, which Shiva will share during this talk. So I hand it, first there will be an opening prayer, and then after that, hand it over to Shiva. Thank you.
Lord, pitiful are we, grant us thy favour, poor, bestow upon us a share from the ocean of thy wealth, needy, do thou satisfy us, abased, give us thy glory. The fowls of the air and the beasts of the field receive their meat each day from thee, and all beings partake of thy care and loving kindness. Deprive not this feeble one of thy wondrous grace, and vouchsafe by thy might unto this helpless soul thy bounty. Give us our daily bread, and grant thine increase in the necessities of life, that we may be dependent on none other but thee, may commune wholly with thee, may walk in thy ways, and declare thy mysteries. Thou art the Almighty, and the loving, and the provider of all mankind. Abdul Baha'i.
Thank you, friends. Greetings to everyone. I want to apologize for where I'm sitting. I feel like everybody's mother. I'm reminded that I'm old enough to be everybody's mother, most people's here. So this is not my selection. I really hope that tonight's gathering will be a space where we learn from each other. Because in fact, building a better community depends on every individual. It's not the work of one person, one entity, one religious organization, or anything like that. It is the work of all human beings. And I thought one of the ways that we can start basically this conversation is to talk about what we are basically talking about is building better community, bringing well-being to humanity, bringing economic justice, bringing education, bringing equality, bringing a world that is safe and secure. And maybe what we can do is first actually look at or have a review of the entities and structures that are fundamentally and historically have been responsible for bringing well-being to humanity. And some of those entities that come to mind, I would like to name them, but I would like for you to choose one and just take a minute to think about if you were today landing on the earth without any notion of any organization, any entity, any structure, and you just read the realities within 1 week via what you hear, what you see, what you understand, what would be your perspective of these entities within 1 or 2 weeks? Remember, you're coming from somewhere else. So we are talking in general. So just think about it. Raise your hand if you would like to share how would you see that entity or structure functioning now in terms of bringing betterment to the world. So one of those entities and structures is the governments. Think about governments of the world. No specific government, but governments of the world. Think about religion. All the religions of the world, regardless of which religion you belong to, think about the structure of organized religion. Think about the power centers, the current power centers of the world, which are actually companies, corporates, organizations, such as insurance, banking, law firms, technology, broadcasting, social media. Think about the entities that are managing these functions. Think about them. And also think about, even as organizations, even think about NGOs and those types of organizations. And then just maybe take a couple of minutes and then raise your hand. As I mentioned those names, just share how do you see them in terms of bringing betterment for the world in general. How do you see them in your mind? Does that make sense? All right, so you will basically tell us what do you think. Okay? 2 minutes. Think about it. You can't cheat.
Sorry.
No. All right, who would like to share about governments, all the governments of the world as they stand right now? What are your thoughts about bringing betterment and well-being to humanity?
Policies that benefit everyone and that's not restrictive, not too much red tape, that there's openness and not constricting everything. I think that's one of the problems in South Africa. Is the policy making needs to be corrected.
Anybody else? How well do you think governments are actually doing in terms of bringing?
Okay. I think within governments, I'll go with make an example of the healthcare facilities that we have in this country. I wish there could be more ethics in how they do things for the betterment of everyone. I feel like most of the time things are for certain group, not for the whole. So if policies, if they could be more ethical and transparent and less corrupt, maybe it would be better for everyone.
One other person on governments, and we're talking about everywhere in the world as well. We don't have to focus just in South Africa. I'm assuming you're talking about please go ahead.
My own impression is that most governments prioritize the interests of their power base. Yeah, the people who have put them in power. That's what they focus on. Not actually everybody, not actually the whole world. Yeah.
All right, let's move on to religion, organized religion. If you were to come and look at the current events around religion in the world, and you were looking at religious communities, what would be your observation in terms of how well they are serving humanity, the well-being of humanity?
I would say religious groupings or whatever format, they, in theory, or they want to improve people's lives, but it's again like politics. It's like government. It's that our own first. You belong to my group, then I focus on you. So they are working in silence, as I said. Mine, if you are outside in what I believe in, wait outside. Or that's how I live. So instead of bringing people together so that they could be collective betterment, they still work with our own. We focus on our own. So our party politics. We focus in my organization, and unfortunately even other institutions, they work like that. You subscribe or affiliate to us, then we think about you.
Anybody else on religion?
Maybe just to share on religion, that let's say there is the religion really is trying to unite or work in society, but there is the problem of family love. There is the shortage of humanity love. So whenever we try to do things, it ends on the family love. We do not extend to humanity love, which I think that is where we need to work on in religion to make sure that we have a love for humanity, not just love for a family or a certain group that you belong to, but we love everybody. I think if we can reach that, there is a lot that can be achieved.
This side is very quiet.
With the deep thinkers.
Please,
Yes. I'm under the impression after observing that religion could be something that could bring people together. But unfortunately, it looks like it's more about trying to set a specific mindset in people so that they act, they behave in a certain way that will favor, religious leaders than the people themselves. It's kind of like politics. It's no longer about the people, but about a certain policy. If people can think, behave in a particular way, so that it pleases back the religious leader. What I've observed.
All right, let's move on to the centers of power, which seem to be mostly global companies nowadays, because one or two of them can own the world, I think, put together. But however, when we look from outside, what they want to portray is that they are here to serve clients, to bring phenomenal value to their customers, to save the world via their ways of looking at economy, or looking at technology and finding solutions for humanity, or bringing happiness through a couple of drinks. So what are your thoughts around the powerhouses of the world in terms of corporations and organizations like that? Do we see them fundamentally saving the world?
Well, I think, as with a lot of other organized kind of institutions or entities, they are driven by a particular set of principles. And the first principles, I think, of corporations is profit. So profit over people, even though they always say people first. So I think when we start working within these corporations, we realize that there is a certain line that we need to prescribe to, and that we need to drive that I would say that, it's that year on year, the profit margins need to increase. It cannot be a stable kind of, stable profit, it's the same every year, every single quarter, every single whatever year. There needs to be a higher amount of, so that kind of the greed aspect, and also the double speak, the double talk aspect in terms of, we want to work for the environment, yet, the Cecils and the BPs of this world are doing all sorts of other things on the side. So, yeah.
Sorry.
Oh.
Sorry, I'm looking at this side because I put expectations on them.
No, that side is what
Just to add to what John said, to me, their business models are often unsustainable for the planet, and they have quite a negative impact on that.
I feel that the big corporations and companies and businesses, they need to, there is corporate social investment and responsibility, but they really need, I think the leaders of those big corporations and companies need to see what's needed on the ground. Go and ask the people in the rural areas or what they really need, instead of just creating programs and projects to uplift and empower others. But they should really go out and speak to the people on the ground, serve the people on the ground, and say, what's needed here in this community, and also go and see what are their funds doing. Are they really assisting on the ground?
Thanks, really. Yeah. Remind me to share a story from DRC about what you said, talking to people. Anybody else?
Okay, I just
Sorry?
want a story to talk to me. I was just to say, especially to what she's talking, that's not their agenda. It's agenda to talk to people. We know what the people want. That's the attitude they come. As many years those who were born in my time, when Africa started to get independence, like your Tanzania President Julius Nyerere said, okay, they all come with these millions, it was millions those days, to help us, but they first give you connection. Because in Africa and Tanzania you have malaria. But he was using that as a metaphor. Come, you already know that I have malaria, and what I need first, treat me with malaria, whether I have it or not, you know it. That's how all these come. So driven by greed, driven by a hidden agenda, driven by we know it all, we are the all-wise, the all-knowing. So these people are poor. Yes, they are poor, but you know, what does that mean? Because poverty is relative. We all shouting people in the rural areas are poor. Yes, maybe they don't have loaf of bread, but maybe they are rich in something. Do you know? So my point to answer question, they come with that double propaganda, but in appearance is all good. Hence the funds can take any ID, whatever. 90% of the funds goes to administration, only 10% goes to profit.
So friends, if we have studied some of the entities or structures that have been historically been seen as the structures that will help humanity advance and reach a state of safety, security, and well-being. But what we are hearing, what we are seeing is that currently they are mostly by forces of our time ended up focusing on the benefits of a few and kind of letting go of the vision to serve the benefit of the whole. This conversion into one area of interest automatically eschews value systems. So when I have to consider the benefit of the others, automatically I go right back in this little circle. So I have no hope, no other way than serve the few, which in itself does not serve humanity, so the values are shifting. But what this also does is that it basically disconnects these entities from humanity as a whole. Because it, as was mentioned, it's basically looking at humanity as a viewpoint of problems to be solved, rather than humanity in itself being a part of the solution process. So this in itself is causing a lot of problems that even people with the best intentions can't really serve and help communities sometimes. There's a lot of success stories. There's a lot of isolated instances of good, manageable solutions, but they are so few and far in between. And even those organizations have to work so hard to actually drive what they are doing, that it leaves very little resource to actually get them done sometimes. So, but one of the aspects that is causing these problems is that all of these systems are based around a fundamental aspect of human life that goes back actually to the Stone Age, where people had to self-defend. They had to basically survive on their own and fight off even the other people, never mind the animals and the nature and all of this. So it goes back to creating these disintegrative powers that bring people apart from each other rather than bringing people together, right? So if we had to look at the Baha'i point of view, the teachings of which comes from Baha'u'llah, the Prophet founder, Baha'u'llah spoke one simple phrase that even a 5-year-old can understand. In fact, I think a lot of 5-year-olds recite it very quickly. He said, "Ye are the fruits of one tree and the leaves of one branch." Now, up to this time, the whole system of the world, including religion, has always been, right up to now, to this day, has always been about my tree and the other trees. I think you mentioned that. Everybody else, right? Companies are about that. Governments are about that. Religion is about that. My tree, I'm fine. My family, my congregation is fine. My government, my party is okay. My company, and there's everybody else. Baha'u'llah said, "Ye are the fruits of one tree." That means regardless of where we come from, who we are, what religion we belong to, what type of work we do, we're still in the same tree, right? So everything that we do impacts each other. We are interconnected and interdependent. So no matter how much knowledge and information we have, how much money we have, how much power we have, or we don't have, we still are in one tree. So let's just think about that. We are all on one tree, right? Regardless. So the next thing is also about the fact that the fundamental living entity within every structure is a single human being, a single individual, right? So the simplest form of solving any single problem in the world is that single human being. Because when we all know, we love our families, right? But when we want to make a decision as a family, it's that much more complex, right? But if I want to decide right now, I don't like this gathering, I want to leave, I can actually leave, if I'm a single person. If I'm coming with my husband and my daughter and my mother, we better all consult and decide together, right? So the simplest form of solving a problem, in fact, is a single human being, presumably. Yet, what we do know is that we are a part of a complex system and we cannot function in reality aside from that. So the first thing is to understand the reality of that whole, right? This in the Baha'i faith is basically referred to as individual and independent investigation of the reality of our existence. So it's not about imitation. It's not about me looking at what my mother is doing and following what she's saying in order to conform to the family. It's not even about me following what the Baha'i community is saying in order to conform within the Baha'i community, me as a Baha'i. And the same thing that was mentioned before, whether we are Christians, Muslims, it's not about imitating and just making sure we conform to a congregation of people. Individual investigation of the truth is about finding the truth to begin with. And that's the journey for every single person on that same tree, right? Are we happy with that? Do we agree? It's not, and every single person's journey is in fact different. Within that, Baha'u'llah talks about these integrative systems. He's saying that we don't need to think about fragmentation of things. We don't need to choose between the individual and the society. If the individual wants to really achieve well-being, achieve a better state of life, achieve a better state of mind, they have to understand that they are connected to the community and the society. There's no way to achieve personal growth without connecting to the society. So these are the integrative powers. Don't think about, do I serve myself and look at my own well-being, or do I look at the well-being of the community where I live? They're connected to each other. You don't have to choose. One of the ways of asking that question is, how might I achieve personal well-being while being a functioning part of the community? Because the two cannot be separate from each other. So there's a lot of dual systems within the teachings of Baha'u'llah. So one is that the well-being of the individual, the growth of the individual is connected to the growth of the community and the society. Another one, and there's many, this is the way I have started explaining to myself because it's hard to understand even though the actions are very simple. The other thing is that in this pattern, religion and science go hand in hand, another integrative thinking. You don't have to choose. One cannot actually manage to understand religion without logic, without science, because that's how people actually get misled into superstition and into fanaticism at times, unfortunately, because they separate religion from logic, from what makes sense, right? So this, within every sphere of religion, no matter what we exercise, we always have to think, am I going too far this way? We actually do have to think about that within the religion. But also if we go too far in science, we have seen now the signs of what happens when we look at science alone and we don't integrate religion. So for these two, I'm going to ask Andrea to please read 1 and 2, which is about the individuals. These are quotations from the Baha'i writings.
Collective maturity and an ever-advancing civilization. 1. All men have been created to carry forward an ever-advancing civilization. Baha'u'llah. 2. All men have been called into being for the betterment of the world. It behoveth every soul to arise and serve his brethren for the sake of God. Baha'u'llah.
So within these two writings, we actually understand the purpose of creation. And we understand that the two are connected. Again, the individual and the community are connected together. The other aspect is the aspect of worship and service. In South Africa, especially, we hear a lot about one of the causes of poverty is that here we have a society, and in many African countries, that want to actually worship. They want to be in a space of worship. But there is this fact that people have been misled to thinking that if I just go to church, if I just worship God and praise the Lord, I will be fine. Right? We will all be fine. Let's just get together, worship the Lord, and we will be fine. One of the most fundamental aspects that Baha'u'llah speaks about is that worship alone not only does not help the individual to grow, it doesn't help the community either. That along with worship has to come the element of service, the element of serving humanity, the element of being of some value to the communities where we live. And this is a very, very important aspect, because if a person is actually, in fact, understanding the value of worship in the utter best form of worship, we actually start seeing humanity as one. This is a very interesting space to be, because the more we worship, the more we understand we are actually one. And the more we achieve this, we come to a state of not fearing being out there, not worrying about lending ourselves to the process of finding joy through something other than fulfilling our own needs. And it becomes a very natural, kind of organic way of being, and a change of mindset, which is initially hard to achieve, but once it's achieved, it just becomes a part of life. So worship alone does not help anybody. It has to be integrated with service. And I'm going to ask for you to please read number 3 and 4.
And the honor and distinction of the individual consists in this, that he among all the world's multitudes should become a source of social good.
Sorry. So can we understand it? How simple is this? That the honor of an individual is not that they sat down and went through hours and hours of prayer and meditation. That the honor of an individual is in actually the fact that they became a source of social good. And I just want to stop here because, sorry, one moment, just to take comments. What do you think of this so far? We have covered a few topics. What are the thoughts? What are some of the...
I think it makes us unselfish when we realize that we are serving the highest good of all. When we're contributing to the earth, we're contributing to the world, we're contributing to our communities, and for the betterment of the whole. So it's not selfish; it's actually unselfish. And it's not conditional; it's unconditional. So that's my comment.
From the beginning, as I'm listening, 2 words mostly keep coming to my mind. One is vision, and next is mission. So if corporates or governments, if they don't have the right vision, they're going to have a very hard time reaching there. If there is a right vision, then they will try and make a plan as a mission to get to that vision. So when you say the worship and social action, it makes perfect sense, of course. If we have that vision where we need to be eventually, and how we get there by individual action and helping, acting a role. And saying this, I always think of jigsaw puzzles as how these funny pieces, they don't look anything like unique, but they are unique. They look crooked, cut off, in funny shapes. And as you try to put them together, somehow you feel like, oh, this is gonna fit here. Then you put there and say, no, it's not quite fitting here. And then you keep playing this unless you get to the right place. You say, it feels right, just a clicking in. So I think we need to find our way in the society as well. We need to find, okay, what am I good for? Where is my role in this thing? And going back to, unfortunately, the corporate world, which they owe most of the world these days, I don't think they have the vision at all. Their mission is for something else, as you said, John. So that goes back to individuals. So the individuals that make that little parts that if it fits in the right place, eventually we'll come up with a better picture.
Any other thoughts?
Just following on with what she said, what came into my mind intuitively is if there's no vision for the people of the earth, then the people will perish. There has to be a common vision. Yeah.
So basically what we are talking about is that we talked about the individual investigation of the reality of the truth. It is about that, potentially about a vision, about understanding our purpose, about understanding what drives a purpose, about understanding how all the elements come together for the betterment of the world. And it's not an easy thing. And in fact, it's something that basically takes place through individual initiative, and as learning is basically learning upon learning. It's not something that's completed. Baha'u'llah himself, for example, has set a set of guidance, but he didn't say specifically, you do this, that happens, you do this, that happens, and when you turn right, you turn. And he's very clear about the fact that this is something that, as time goes by, throughout the time, will become very clear, because it's very it's very hard to explain. All the religions of the world promised world peace. It's very hard for us to actually understand world peace, and the reality that world peace, because as individuals we sometimes like to think that one day all the countries of the world come and shake hands and say we will no longer have wars. But end of war is not actually world peace, because even if the governments decide they will never ever take arms against each other, there is still within the cities, inside the countries themselves, where people are taking up disagreements and injustices and lack of real coherence among themselves. You get rid of that, you come into the neighborhood where one neighbor is fighting another neighbor over something like the dog barking, for example, right? So this eventuality of world peace, which is inevitable because it's the will of the Creator, is not going to happen because some countries came and shook hands. And within this structure, now what is happening is that even within the Baha'i faith, okay, we're talking about Baha'i faith here, but first of all, that understanding that there's no community as such, that all the people are supposed to be outward looking. There's no inward looking. There's no one tree. You're supposed to look at everybody. And if you don't have a view like that, you in fact aren't fulfilling the directions of Baha'u'llah. This is very important. But in doing that, one has to realize a personal transformation. One has to be so close to that understanding that with every person that you encounter, you actually have love. Can you imagine how hard it is to achieve? But yet, if you find that many people from within one community, regardless of race, regardless of religion, regardless of which political party they belong to, or hopefully not, whatever that's happening, if you can actually see that love, then you find that it's quite easy, right? So this then leads to that concept of community building. Within the Baha'i faith, the concept of community building is a very simple task. It's very achievable through a few people coming together. What can happen, it can be many different things. People can come together and say, let's sit together and say prayers. But after we finish prayers, let's not assume we've done everything. We said, God, please help, out the door. Thank you very much, here's some cake. It's not actually like that. It's about, let's get to know each other. Let's have a frank talk about where do we come from? What do we understand about the world? What is, for example, our thoughts about prayer itself? What are our thoughts about ethics at workplace? What are our thoughts about connecting? Avoiding, for example, backbiting at work or gossip at work. It can be anything. It can be anything. But when we come and pray together and we become closer to each other, let's talk. Let's have conversations. The other aspect is that, in general, communities are built through developing capacities. That every human being has a spiritual capacity and a material capacity. This is very important. Every single human being is endowed with spiritual capacity and a material capacity. We cannot focus only on spiritual capacity, developing the spiritual capacity. We have to be. The betterment of the world depends on material means. It depends on, so we can't ignore this one or work on this one and ignore the spiritual capacities. But one of the things that happens during this process is that, as we have witnessed, unfortunately so far, as we are talking, we can see that there has been a lot of emphasis on material development. And as organizations, for example, have advanced themselves through personal means of justifying the demands of a few over the benefits of all, a lot of us have been forced to live within a system of earning money and maintaining ourselves, which we don't even believe in, right? We don't actually buy into. Yet we need to do this. So within the understanding of the Baha'i faith is that you can be as we all can be as rich as we want. There is no limit to how much wealth we can actually accumulate. There will always be different levels of means. There will always be people that are much richer than other people. What needs to be avoided is the extreme of the two, to where we are now. South Africa being one of the perfect examples, I think, next to Brazil and India potentially, where there is such extremes of wealth and poverty that this entity feels like they're even a different species to this entity. The disconnect is so huge, and then we sit and wonder about this. So what is required, what is basically mentioned, is that it's okay to have material advancement as long as we are not attached to it. As long as we know that we have to, when we are in a state of having, we need to take care of those who don't have. And what we are seeing in South Africa is that the people that don't have actually support each other much better than the people that have versus the don't have. Am I right or wrong? DRC is a very perfect example of that, where everybody is coming together and supporting each other no matter what little they have. Africa is a lesson to the world in this aspect. No place in the world is as Africa, most of the world views Africa as almost one country. And you always, you have to really spend time in another country to see that, for example, South Africa, for me, like DRC, because that's the only other country that I lived in, is as different as France and UK, right? But because they're so vocal about their differences, Africa seems like one nation because they actually are more fundamentally connected to unity. They talk less about their differences, right, than the rest of the world. This is an interesting thing. Why? Because the culture of Africa, in general, is about helping each other more than isolating mine versus others. Ubuntu, right? So this is a very different, very interesting aspect of the people of Africa. And it's something beautiful to build on. So with that in mind, can we read number 5 and 6?
The role of knowledge.
Oh, sorry, so here we're talking about material and spiritual development.
Strain every nerve to acquire both inner and outer perfections. For the fruit of the human tree hath ever been and will ever be perfections both within and without. It is not desirable that a man be left without knowledge or skills, for he is then a barren tree. Then so much as capacity and capability allow, ye needs must deck the tree of being with fruits such as knowledge, wisdom, spiritual perception, and eloquent speech. Must I do 6 as well?
I think we can stop there because we want so now we understand, you know, the whole concept of knowledge, spiritual perception, acquiring sciences, and advancing in the spiritual growth. So the outcome of this is basically, if you then think about a small community, let's just imagine in our head a small community of people, and this is happening all over the world, coming together, praying together, having conversations about the realities of the community, start learning with each other, going through a set of materials, set of conversations, set of activities that basically contribute to a higher level of understanding ourselves, both spiritually and materially, right? And at that state, coming to a sense of knowledge, volition, and action. And at that stage, discussing, how can we make our community better? How can we make our community better? Or, you know, the streets are very dirty. Let's come together and let's actually, within the next block, clean these streets. I like to use an example. New York used to be one of the worst, most, the highest crime rate,
Yes.
where walking the streets was impossible. It used to be such a center of crime and you know, lack of organization that it was just not really pleasant to be there. So a new governor comes and he finds out that because there is a lot of mafia, the cleaning, the system of cleaning the streets in New York was actually, the biggest one was, I can't remember the name of the company, which actually was run by the mafia. So if anybody else wanted to come and clean the streets, they had to deal with their union. And so therefore they were not allowed. And this union was forever kind of being connected to the mafia, very comfortable with the fact that the streets were super dirty and they were being paid. And nobody could tell them anything, right? So the mayor, the new mayor, decides enough is enough. He starts dealing with the group, with the union, with the mafia and all the related parties, does what he has to do to just get rid of them. And he focuses on cleaning the streets, right? Something as simple as cleaning the streets in New York. And little by little, just the change of the environment, the physical environment, invited people to actually kind of get a bit higher sense of themselves. Baha'u'llah talks about how physical cleanliness, though an outer meaning physical state, has a huge impact on our spiritual well-being. So let's forget New York, they're advancing nicely on their own. Let's go back to our little communities here in South Africa, for example. Let's say people come together and say that the streets are dirty, let's just, you know, within one block clean. Let's say that some of the people, some of this, as we see all the time, the youngsters are battling in school with math problem. Few people can help. Let's help. Let's do this. Let's do that. Whatever they decide, it's really up to them. At what stage they decide, that's also up to them. They have to be ready to do something, right? How do they do it? It's also up to them. What matters is that through these systems, the individuals have not only grown the capacity to consult with each other, to be a part of the decision-making, the solution-making process, they have also have the fundamentals of the science and the spiritual aspects involved in creating a better community. And I'm going to use, so this is basically the natural, organic way that the community can be built. And it's a solution that has a spiritual fundamentals as well as scientific applications as time goes by. And this is offered in the ways of people coming together to pray, people coming together to go through study materials that helps us understand the purpose of life, helps us understand the value of, for example, prayer, helps us focus a little bit about the life of the soul, and so on and so forth. It keeps advancing. People can go as far as they like. It offers opportunity for every individual to actually engage in teaching children, in spending time with children, understanding that children are like little gems that have the power to actually help move the world forward. Is if from early childhood they understand many aspects of their own essence. And then there's classes for also, let's say, I don't want to say children, young people from age 11 to 14, which are the most kind of difficult, according to the society, the most selfish, the most difficult age, whereas it's very well explained within the material that these are the most precious years of life through which human beings form their own. They learn to form their own value system, and in fact, this is the most precious groups of people living among us. From those confusing years that they go through, where they are, and so very gentle, very beautiful aspects that are taught, and then people have the opportunity to learn how to work with children, or what is referred to as junior youth, not youth yet. So all of these opportunities are part of the community building efforts that people engage with, regardless of whether they're Baha'is or not Baha'is. And this is just some of the work that is there for building better communities. And it is understood that as we grow, we can actually spiritually grow and materially advance. Not only we change the foundations of a community, we actually change the foundations of a society. And once that happens, then we can bring in, because the world is in a state that governments and these companies, they have gone to a point that they cannot no longer be self-correcting, that we will not see governments correcting themselves. But if the foundations of the individuals and communities grow, then we can start building new systems, right? And correcting some of the ones that we see. So I want to close with a very small story about a little village in DRC. I believe you are from there. So DRC is a very phenomenal country. In this little village, this process started. I don't know how long it took. And a lot of young people from age, let's say 15 and up, are engaged. It's a small village. Education is very basic, if even available at all. But they start through these processes. And as they advance, they are learning to a point that the village starts relying on these young people for advice, for problem solving, for issues of conflict. So at one point, and of course they are learning both the spiritual aspects of life and little by little trying to fix some of the material problems of the village. As time goes by, the chief of the village is approached by an alcohol liquor company. So they come and they go to the chief of the village, and they talk about opening a liquor store. And they talk about the opportunities for employment and money coming in, and the other villages will also come and buy shop in this village and all of that stuff. And the chief says, okay, it sounds very good, but I would like to consult with others, and I'll come back to you. So he brings in this group of youth, and he says to them, this is the opportunity before us. What do you think? So within the learnings that these youth have gone through, it's understood very well that they should stay away from drinking alcohol entirely altogether. That alcohol not only is not conducive to feeling better overall, it's actually destructive. However, these young people, instead of turning around and saying, no, we don't need alcohol, they say, let us go back to the community. This village is a community. Let's go back to the community. Let us go back, and we'll come back and bring what the community says. So lesson number one, they're not seeing themselves in one tree, right? Lesson number two, they've been put in this place of power to make the decision, and they say, no, we will go back to the community. We let the community make the decision, going back to what we said about talking to people. So they go back to the community, and then they come back, and at that point, the people that wanted to bring that business are there. So they turn around and they say, the community has spoken, and they have decided that bringing alcohol to this village is not the best idea. It's not the best idea for this village at this point. But however, we have identified all these other things that we don't have in this village, because DRC is a very, at the same time, highly physically isolated. From even the biggest cities to the next big city, there's no roads. If you want to go from Kinshasa to Lubumbashi, which is probably the capital, going probably to the next biggest city, I don't know in terms of numbers, you can't drive. You can't get in a car and drive from one city to another. You have to fly, or you can take 4 modes of transportation through 3-4 days to actually get from one place, main center, to another main center, sometimes for a week, right? And now here's the village, and they say, but we have identified all of these needs, all of these things we can get in this village. So instead, open a shop and bring A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and then you bring it here, and you can make a good business. So lesson, I don't know number what, but the lesson there is, they don't see, even though they understand the fundamental damages of alcohol entering into a village, they do not behold the other person as the opposite, or the wrong, or the mistaken, or the one in the error. They make a good suggestion to these people, or something that maybe they didn't even understand, but of course the decision is up to them. They didn't see them as the other. They say, here's an opportunity for you to make money. Open a store and bring these things. Now, are these kids, these youth, are they advanced in sciences of mankind? No. The level of education in this village is very basic. But the spiritual advancement, the understanding of the concept of what a village is, understanding the concept of one tree, understanding the concept of seeing somebody else as your own, looking through the eyes of love to somebody who's speaking potentially, I would say, nonsense, right? It brings them to this sphere of thinking, naturally, organically, lovingly, and obviously one can think about it from a very advanced state of capacity. Thank you, friends.
Thank you.
So maybe we can open it for about 10 minutes for comments, discussion, any thoughts. Then we can have tea and coffee afterwards, dessert. Anyone? Thoughts? Comments? Questions?
I just want to think about talk about this consciousness to say the individual. But I think that's the most powerful, because we, in our isolated spaces, we are aware of what's happening in the world, and we are aware of what is not good for us, taking from the story. But I don't ask a question or a comment. How could we push this awareness to a higher level where it would lead that you and I, it promotes what I would call collective transformation. That means I'm aware or I'm conscious in my, but it's not enclosed within me. How would it transfer to us, which I think the outcome now will not be just consciousness, would be the actual, not individual transformation, because to transform alone means meaningless, collective. I'm not sure it's a question or because like this story, I see these people, not necessarily the whole village, but maybe this group was so conscious that their individual consciousness was transformed to collective consciousness, which was not just consciousness, which has brought about transformation, which by default the whole community, and I imagine maybe in that meeting when they went back to the community, say there are these people who have this idea, what do you think? Yeah. Maybe somebody was still saying, no, alcohol is business, not even mentioning, because sometimes you don't even get to the details of it's alcohol or it's bread, whatever. But somebody, because of the, what they call it in science, critical mass, the fire is so strong. It's not just one stick burning there, which we even forget, but they hit it. Even if I'm saying I'm at the back of the fire, I'm cold on my back, but it's so strong that.
Are you talking
Does
about?
it make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. How my question is that as society, we are aware. I don't think anybody, maybe I'm naive, is not aware of what needs changing, but the courage or the level of consciousness is not reaching that critical stage or level where.
One of the things that comes to mind is like you said, all of us, probably all of us, it's fair to say that we understand what needs changing. But what we don't understand is how this change is supposed to happen. So the reality of a country from DRC is very different from South Africa, right? But we want to talk about South Africa because this is where we are. One of the aspects that has around the world, funny enough, with this kind of approach to community building has proven successful, is that it's most of the time successful in areas where people are not materially very advanced. And one of the reasons for that is that the world is now pushing us towards material advancement, not just because we all want to be super rich, because there's fear, there's an understanding that there's fear in not having. And so where there's no access to having, because there's not a lot of material means to have education or to, of course education is very important, but because there's not a lot of means to having a lot of things, then people's sights are detached, right? And so therefore they're very prone to seeing what works, what is working for advancement, that is not necessarily purely material, which is what we all have our eyes on. We are conditioned, those of us who live in the more advanced communities, we are conditioned to see money as success, as a fruition of being a wonderful human beings, right? We have achieved. So in the smaller in those areas, that's not what is actually considered, because everybody is pretty much enjoying the same lack of access. But within every instance, in any case, to start attracting and creating the consciousness of wanting to become one, to live in one tree, is something that sometimes is achieved through setting a very good example. Everything starts with a good example. That if every one of us, again through individual investigation of reality, and understanding the purpose of that the Creator has created for us become a source of good example, we start creating a vision that others can actually start seeing. And that example fundamentally is about a person that is away from the self. That example is about that person that inspires us, because they work hard, they go through the ups and downs of life, but at all times they are focused on what benefits everybody, rather than what benefits me. Let's not be mistaken. The community building teachings of the Baha'i faith is hard work. The joy is actually in that aspect of the hard work. Baha'u'llah speaks very clearly that in the times of achievement, be sure that there's going to be a fall, right? He says be sure, and be sure that when you are really at the very lowest state of being, in terms of hardship, in terms of anxiety, in terms of stress, in terms of, be sure that you're going to go up again. And don't be worried about this, and don't take glory in that, because this is the cycle of life. Yet what becomes important, that through all these cycles, we are a good example as human beings, an inspiration to others. When we are up here, we're sharing the joys with others. When we are down here, we don't sit and moan and groan and talk about the problems of humanity and bring everybody else down with us, because that doesn't help anybody either, right? We just take everything with this mature state of mind that I have the capacity. God will be here for me to move up again. And then when I'm up there, I will remember that I have to share with others. We'll remember that. And of course, this up and down is what matures us, which bruise us, into the human beings that we are supposed to be. So this is how we actually start, because we are connecting via more than the means that we think. And there's a lot of people here that can just, we often just look at a person and we see something and we don't know what it is. So this consciousness starts growing through praying together, through serving together, and it starts taking strength from community to community. And then little by little, hopefully in future, they will overlap and start creating that critical mass that you're talking about.
I want to share just 2 points on that. This whole COVID situation is like, it's perfect in its imperfection, because we've all been sent back home, and now we have to work from home and sort out issues in our community and suburbs, and on WhatsApp chats, we've got to be consultative with each other and kind, and not pick each other one neighbor out on a group, and ask for consultation, and how do we solve this problem, or this issue in our suburb and area, whatever. So I think it's already happening organically, but it's just, I think we're unconscious of it, but it is already happening, where we have to serve the community and serve our our suburbs and everything, and everybody, and help everybody. There's another beautiful story I just heard about of a South American couple. Over 10 years, this whole area in South America, a desert had set in. It was desertified. There was not a tree in sight, no animals, nothing. And over a period of 10 years, with help from everybody around, the communities, they've all collectively planted new trees, flowers, everything, recreated everything, and brought all the animals and the bird life back in. So, and to leave a legacy like that, that's just an example of what 2 people or a whole community or group of people can do.
Thank you everyone. I think, shall we close it and then just have some tea, coffee, and we can take this conversation outside of the formal kind of setup, and then just have coffee and tea and carry on discussing. The night is young and it's the weekend. So thank you very much, Shiva. I'm sure everyone enjoyed it, and it was a very interesting discussion and presentation. Thank you for that. And thank you for everyone's input and contribution. It's always wonderful to actively participate so that we can learn from each other and share some of the experiences and thoughts that we each have, so that we also can start building this community that really kind of cares and works together. So thank you everyone, and yeah, let's have some coffee and tea.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cake is coming.
Yay.